everybody. Welcome to another episode of Off the Fence.
Off the fence.
Off the fence.
Fence.
Guys, if you would please do all of the reverb.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Thanks. So this is going to be a fun episode because here's open-handed episode here. Brady and I don't really know each other. I know you digitally, basically. That's all of 100% of our communication until probably 10 minutes ago has been through, at least for me, the phone.
Look at the internet doing good things.
Wow, internet. Good job.
Yeah, internet.
It's impressive.
So, but let's get in this. Let's do real quick. If someone were just to meet you and they'd be like, "Hey, who are you?" What would you initially say in the first 15 to 30 seconds?
I would say, I'm Brady. Who are you?
That's good.
I like it.
Yeah. Two rules I have.
What are they?
One is never give all the details.
Oh.
Okay. Like never or never at the beginning?
No, never give all the details.
Okay.
Oh, then I'm out. I always give all the details.
Oh, that's against the rule. There are two rules.
What's the second rule?
Yeah.
You're hilarious. So
That's funny.
So let me tell everybody. So
You're going to share that with the
I
kids.
actually give all the details. I am a wide open book begging you to flip to the next page. To be honest,
David's going to make that into a dad joke for a text.
For sure.
tomorrow
That's
to the
great.
kids.
I brought you all my best stuff.
That's fantastic. So one day, I'm on Instagram, and I think everyone gets ads on Instagram, and I came across. I was in the midst of studying and thinking about stuff, just processing life and culture and blah 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 blah, and I saw this mug that said "Safety Second," and it was like that's exactly that. Like that says what I. That was like what I was thinking. Katie and I talked about this. We listened to a book one time on a trip, and I was like, "This is the phrase." So I bought the mug, drinking the mug, loved the mug. It's great. My son broke the mug. I repaired the mug, and I used it for a sermon illustration. I was talking about it. That's a lot of the sermons come out of, hey, here's some life lessons I've been learning, what I've been walking through. And then all of a sudden, I don't remember how far off, I get a message from you. I have no idea. I don't know where you live. I bought a mug off of Instagram kind of thing. And you reach out and said something to the effect of like you saw that or whatever, cool mug and all that. And I was like, wait a minute. Now I start putting pieces together. I start doing internet searching, and I'm like, you're connected to that. What in the world? This is so cool. So we send messages back and forth a little bit. And now you're here on the podcast.
Here I am, and I forgot your mug, man. I had you a nice mug.
He still uses that mug every day.
I know.
He uses it, and Bo breaks a lot of stuff. That took some girth for him to have been able to break it.
I don't know what kind of super glue we use at home.
Yeah.
It is super.
It's amazing.
Is it from Red Bison?
Yeah.
So I just ordered these mugs with. Have you ever watched McClintock? It's a John Wayne movie. Okay, you got to watch it. But they have a quote that says, "Don't say it's a fine morning, or I'll shoot you." And it's our family's favorite movie. And so I just had them make a bunch of mugs for my parents. McClintock, it's a John Wayne movie. Anyway, but Red Bison is awesome.
Red Bison is awesome.
They're fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's a Red Bison mug, so it's just really good.
First question. You either own a company, run a company, or are part of a company that eventually gets where there's a mug out that says "Safety Second." Yeah. Since then, I literally bought the T-shirt, and I get it. Like the phrasing on the stuff that you guys put out is like you're in my head going, yeah. So, what's the heart behind that? I mean, you're doing something with your life, and there seems to be an agenda behind it. I don't think agendas are bad. I think you've got what are you doing with your life?
So I'm sad that I forgot your mug.
Don't be sad.
It's a great intro to our relationship.
Yeah.
I went to 3 other places before I got to this spot. And then I'll just back up a little bit. And then I went over to the church building over here.
Yeah.
And I go to, these doors are locked and these doors are locked. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to call and ask him to unlock the door. I'm going to sneak in because I know you church folks are real trusting people, and there's often a door like, wow, we always leave that one unlocked. No one ever goes in it. Well, I go in it. So I'm walking around, and then as I'm walking, I didn't want to walk in here with this, so I put it in my pocket. But as I'm walking, I find this knife. So I'm like,
just found it?
yeah, it was on the ground, open. And so I was like, I'll submit that for evidence. So I pick it up and it's open. And then I'm like walking around the building trying to open doors with a knife in my hand. And I'm like, oh, maybe I had my coffee in one arm and my phone, and I was like, had a knife. And anyway, so this is a great intro for us.
Perfect.
This is a great start. I forgot your mug. I went to all the wrong places, and then I tried to sneak in with a knife.
And you found a knife.
Yeah, I found a knife. I don't know whose knife that is, but
That's bananas.
Seems like a cool knife.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Anyway, yeah, your mug. So this is a great story for me as well, and it's really what has led me here because I'm like, I'm clearly led here.
Okay.
I'll go all the way back. So one Sunday, I've pretty much been houseless, which is what they say in Portland when you live in a tent out on the thing.
Okay.
I've been not quite like most of those guys are, but I gave up my house so someone else could live in it for the winter. So I've been kind of bouncing around, staying wherever. Well, one of the places I stay is at my parents'. And I'm at my parents' one Sunday morning, and like in the very beginning, and I haven't hung out with my parents on Sunday mornings for a while, but in this context, here I am. And my dad's gone, but my mom is still there. And I'm like, Mom, why aren't you at church? She's been a pretty faithful churchgoer my whole life. And she's like, she gave me some reasons, stuff started with the pandemic. Okay. And then she just kind of fell off. She's like, I was attending this online church for a while that I found on Facebook via an ad or whatever she saw. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, how come you're not on it? She's like, yeah, you're right. And so she starts punching it up, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and she's folding laundry, watching one of your sermons. And she goes, Brady, this is right up your alley. He's talking about safety as an idol. And I'm like, that sounds cool. So I kind of like, listen, I'm not going to pay attention, Mom, but it sounds cool. Let me check it out. And then this guy turns around and he's like, look at this mug. And I'm like, that's my mug. And I'm like, well, this is very strange because I had no idea where you were either. This is an online church out in the world. Yeah. You know, who knows? And so I see, and then you've got your mug and it's cracked. And I'm like, I can fix this. I can get this guy a new mug. And so I go find your name on Instagram and I say, hey, dude, I heard your mug broke. And you're like, yeah, it's fine. I glued it, and it's too expensive to buy another one. And so all is well. And then like 10 minutes later or 15 minutes later or something like that, it's like, I didn't mean the mug was too expensive. It was appropriately priced. I just, on a pastor's salary, whatever, like it just doesn't make sense to buy a new one. And I was like,
I remember that where you were like, oh,
I didn't. I mean, you sent me a message, but I get messages from people that I don't know. Dude, so I'm just replying. I'm not.
And all I said was, I heard your mug was broken.
Yeah. And I didn't look at who, like, I just was like, yeah, so here. And then I was like, well, I wonder who that was. Oh, crap.
I have offended him.
I just told this dude who sells this mug that his mug is priced too high.
I'm never talking to him again. You have any?
And I was like, tell him we're on a budget.
Stephen.
It's fine.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, there's a budget and we have an allowance, and like, oh, now we're down.
It is great. Man, I fell in love with you. And
too many details.
I was like, what a sweetheart. This is exactly what I would do. What a wonderful individual. I'm like, thank you for the sermon. Thank you for the message. Thank you for buying the mug.
You're welcome.
And, whatever. And then I continue to pay attention. And so now I see you on Instagram, and I see you on Sundays. I started going over to my mom's house, even when I wasn't staying there, to go to church with her.
Oh, cool.
Right?
Awesome.
Because it was like, if you're basing a sermon, which is how I base my sermons that aren't sermons, they're just, pontificating or whatever, off of the messaging that I'm using, then as much as we don't know each other, we do. Because you have some understanding as safety as an idol, or safety is just never second or never first.
Right.
Safety first is silly. So, and then just paid attention, and it was refreshing. My mom and I used to, we'd have at times physical battles about church.
Okay.
Where she would slap me. I didn't ever slap back, but she would. I would clap back, and that's when I'd get slapped, and then I would not clap back anymore.
All right.
But yeah, man, it's been awesome, and I pay attention. Like that's it's pretty interesting that I would show up and say, "How come you're not at church?" And she would say, fell off. I was attending this online one for a while. Let me pull it up because I don't know why I stopped. I just started folding laundry on Sundays and whatever. It's my time where everyone's gone.
Yeah.
And so she pulled it up. She's folding laundry, and then this guy's got one of our mugs. And not only is he got one of our mugs, but he's bringing it to life because everything that we produce, all of the messaging has a big story, lots of miles, lots of heart, lots of mind, lots of thought put into it. And it's boiled down to one thing, a little phrase on a shirt, which could be just, people think of 15 different phrases and throw them on shirts. It could be that shallow, and it's not. It's actually so much deeper. And so here's a guy who's here's sort of our process, and it becomes a product, and you're taking that product and making it this, which is my dream for everything that we have, So I'm like, I'm going to pay attention. So we've been attending and we've been paying attention, and I chatted with you a little bit back and forth. And then I don't even remember how the podcast thing happened, but I love podcasts because there's just unfortunately, we just don't oftentimes sit down, right? And have just a hey, let's not talk about the weather.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's just let's get into it. And on podcasts, not only are you taking the time to do that, this triangle right here, like we are doing that, but also these people that are paying attention, which I would love to know who they are going to witness this conversation that was had intentionally and, with thoughtfulness and grace and all of the things that I imagine it will happen with. And we should just do that all the time.
A lot more. I totally
all
agree.
the time. And even if no one watched it, this is very cool, by the way. The people who can't see what's going on, there's these.
It's impressive, yeah.
There's a lot of work in this. There's lights. There's these cool things. I love that there's a candle burning. I'll tell you why. There's cameras on every angle. It's crazy. It's very cool. But the coolest thing is we're taking the time. Not only taking the time to have this conversation, but I just drove whatever it was, 3.5 hours over here, and the entire time I'm just sitting in consideration of what it means to be coming here, why I'm coming here, what we might exchange, what I would like to tell you, what I'd like to ask you, what you might ask me, what I might say. Just you're sitting there outside of your busyness, outside of your rush. So I'm like a podcast. I don't care if your mother watches it and that's your one person.
Yep.
If we can just get together and have an hour or an hour and a half or whatever of intentional conversation about life, liberty, and the pursuit. I
love it.
We should just do it more often,
It does make me wonder if my mom watches.
Mom, are you watching?
I don't know.
My mom, I can tell you, does watch because I don't know if she watches the podcast, but she does watch a service, and I will make sure that she watches. So, hello, Mom. Still got your tattoo? I got a tattoo.
Of your mom or
It just says Mom.
Oh,
yeah. Forever, I was like, Mother's Day, I'm going to get a tattoo for you, Mom. Mother's Day is, I think, always on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's hard to find a tattoo artist on a Sunday. Well, I found one Sunday. It was this apprentice. He's like, I'm not really allowed to do tattoos by myself. And I'm like, come on, dude, it's for my mom. And he's like, all right, as long as it's just the outline. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's just the outline. And then I get there and I'm like, all right, it's a pretty weird heart to not color it red, right? And he's like, I can only do outlines, I can't. I'm like, man, what's the difference, dude?
Yeah.
Color that
Fill
thing.
it in.
This is for my mom, dude. It's Mother's Day. What are you doing? And he's like, all right. He broke the rules. Now he's my guy. He's a great tattoo artist. But anyway, I got a mom tattoo.
My parents gave him money for a tattoo once and gave him an idea, and it was, I love my in-laws.
Yeah.
You
Did
still
you get
haven't gotten
it?
that yet. My mom drew it out and everything.
I love them very much.
Yeah.
She was just submitting something for consideration.
They're still alive, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They are.
Yep.
They haven't given me money for tattoos.
The Bible
I
says
need to
something about not
mention
marking
that.
yourself for the dead. Leviticus, right?
Yep.
So as long as they're alive, it's
Do it.
probably okay.
It also says that
He's
Jesus is going to
their
come
favorite.
back with basically a tattoo on his thigh. So it's always the
He didn't come back with a tattoo
no
on
that
his
Jesus
thigh?
is going to come back with a tattoo on his thigh.
Really says that?
Yeah, in Revelation.
That's
Well,
one. That's
regardless-
the one I don't read, dude. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's. I mean, it's.
you get in there.
It's a heavy one.
Ooh,
It's a heavy one.
Well,
a lot of
we
color in this. I only do the outline. You know, I'm not allowed.
It's a heavy one. All right. Well, so I says I don't know much about you. I'm curious to know your story. I'm curious to know. So you, where do you come from? What do you do with your life? What have you been doing with your life? What are ups and downs? When you think of your story, what is it?
Well, I come from Wyoming,
Okay.
Sheridan specifically.
Beautiful area.
That's home. Probably die there.
Okay.
Planning on it. I spent most of the last 5 years mostly away from Wyoming,
Okay.
away from Sheridan, traveling and exploring and just kind of checking out the world. 5-ish years ago, 2017, we started a company off of a brand that we had just sort of had betwixt us,
Okay.
called Go Fast Don't Die, which is
Yep.
a major mug.
Yep.
And that's most of what I do
Okay.
is serve that brand.
Okay.
And the brand is founded on the idea or the mission, we say, to contribute to the culture and community that inspire our existence. So, which should be every brand's mission statement, I think, right? We should be contributing. We should be a faucet, not a drain kind of thing. And the mission for us is, I really think, very similar to what it is for you, which is to encourage people to live their best story.
Yeah.
And for people to consider what that is and then just say yes to it, say yes to taking the step in that direction. And that largely comes from living a life where I wasn't. Or I shouldn't even say that. Coming to a place in life that was sort of a death for me,
Okay.
where you look back and you go, okay, what did I do? Here's my death. Here's the end for me.
Right.
What did I do with my life that I'm proud of? And the list that I made up was there was some. I was like an apologist for my life. You know, I was like, that wasn't that bad. You know,
Yep.
I did
Yep.
this. That's cool, right? And in the context was largely that I was married and divorced, and the divorce at the, sort of when I came to terms with it was not a very fun thing, if you can imagine.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
And so, but when I kind of came to the, okay, well, I guess that marriage is not somewhere where one person is there and another person is not there. So you can kind of hold on to something that is not holding on to you. And it's just, you're sort of just dragging yourself behind a truck sort of thing.
Yep.
And holding the truck back as well. So you're causing some drag for the
Yep.
truck, which is not necessarily loving to the truck, even if it's dragging, So anyway, I came to this place where I'm like, man, I don't really love my story.
Okay.
I would have done it different had I known it was going to turn out like this. And so as soon as, the weather cleared, and I mean that both literally and figuratively,
Okay.
had a, winter where I hung out in with not much in a house, me and a rocking chair and a sound system and a little stereo.
Okay.
It was great. And a church pew was in there.
Okay.
And listened to a lot of, are you familiar with David Ramirez?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So listened to a lot of David, since taught him how to ride a motorcycle. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And so anyway, I sat in there very depressed, very down. Like I said, now is the end. This is how it ends. So,
Okay.
what did I do? And then when that weather cleared, when sort of that depression lifted or just that acceptance happened, I was like, I have a motorcycle. I'm going to get on it and I'm going to go until I figure out what's next.
Okay.
And I did that. And we had this brand that was just sort of like a loose thing. We had a marketing agency, and so we had a logo for it, because when you're a marketer and you've got people like you guys have got, you can just make logos for stuff because you say something and the designer will pick it up and go, let's do this, you know? So it was on a couple t-shirts. But I left, and I found other people who were searching. I found other people who had a story similar to mine, or, you know, they were out there for a reason. You don't really pack up and go unless you've got, you know.
Yep. There's a story behind it.
Yeah. And so I'd meet these people, and I really was like, it was not in a huge mood for small talk.
Okay.
And, you know, so I was like, who hurt you? Like, what are you doing out here, man?
What happened? Yeah.
I remember talking to this guy, I was in Las Vegas, sitting right outside of this bar called Hogs and Heifers, which I was like, I'm in Vegas. This is crazy. I'm a Wyoming kid. Like, you know, like I had been to Vegas, like but like, I'm out here by myself. This is kind of wild. But I'm talking to this guy, and he was a Canadian guy, and he just kind of like was living on his bike. He was just traveling. And we had just this really great conversation. And like, I kind of told him what had been going on with me.
Okay.
I had business partners that broke up that were my best friends. They had a riff. Okay. I had a marriage that didn't work, that, you know, that fell apart. I had our dog Lola died. Oh. Yeah, like a country song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was like, sounds like you've been on a real heartbreaker tour. And I played in a punk rock band growing up.
Okay.
So I was in a band, and I imagined my life being on tour all the time. I wanted to live in a van, play my guitar at night, hang out with people, get in the van, go to the next one. That was kind of the idea for life. So the idea of a tour with a theme made a ton of sense to me. And I just thought, when I left there, I'm very grateful to that Canadian gentleman with the little funny little helmet he had. Vegas is it's a helmet state, so you have to wear a helmet, right?
Okay.
So it's funny when you're from a place that you don't wear a helmet. So what these guys do is they buy the cheapest little novelty silly helmet that they would never wear, right? But they have to wear it there, so they like throw this silly little helmet on. They look very. Anyway, I'm very grateful to that dude, because he gave me this idea of a themed tour, and I said the rest of my life will be a heart maker tour. I want to give, you know, I want to contribute. I want to give to myself. I want to give to other people. I want to like just, you know, I want to be a contribution. I want to be a faucet, not a drain. Yeah. I can do that. Like, let the rest of the tour switch themes. I've had enough heartbreak for a lifetime. You know, at the time, I felt like it was enough. And I mean, it still feels like enough. I'm down with calling that done. But,
for sure.
Anyway, the Heartmaker tour kind of started. And Go Fast kind of started.
Okay.
And so we came back, and we made it into a company. And we just started taking the lessons that were, you know, afforded me or afforded us on the road. My business partner also went through divorce.
Okay.
We basically went through it together, which is a very funny thing to do together. I don't suggest it to anyone. But if you do, you can call me. I can tell you kind of how it doesn't work. Okay. And anyway, yeah, so fast forward 5 years from that point, and it's a lot of just traveling. It's hundreds of thousands of miles on a bike with people. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of conversation where you go, well, here's my stuff. What's your stuff? And you exchange, and all of those lessons that you learn through that process, and the contribution that we wanted to give is to encourage people to live their best story, which starts by considering what that is for themselves, and then choosing to live it.
Yes.
So, which is a scary thing. It really is a scary thing. So anyway, yeah, so fast forward all the way. My best story certainly involves being encouraging to my mom to do what her best story is. And then that story intersected with you guys. And I have no doubt that my best story was coming over here to have this conversation with you.
Love it, man. I mean that, like, genuinely the message that comes out of what I see you doing I think it's so timely, man. Like, not just the safety stuff, but the you put out a shirt recently that involves a tiger, and I was like, and I love the story. Like, there's no tiger, right? Probably leaving a bunch of people out now, going, "What are you talking about, a tiger?" But
put the link below.
Yeah, we'll put a link below because you guys put I think the story, someone on the website.
Yeah, Nie ma tigresa. It's Polish.
Is
it for there is no tiger? Yeah, and so the story is that so our friend Neil, who is another guy who we've run into, he tells the story. It's his story. He tells the story of he goes to this huge sales presentation.
Okay.
And he's in Chicago, and huge sales presentation in front of his bosses, like great opportunity to just crush it and kind of solidify his place, you know, just a cool opportunity. He gets the stage and he just blows it, botches the whole thing. And so he's at the hotel later, can't sleep because he's like, I'm an idiot.
Okay.
You know, I've ruined my life basically. I don't even know if I'm gonna have a job tomorrow because now the powers that be know that I am a bummer, you know.
Yep.
And so he goes down to the hotel bar, and there's this Polish bartender, and I might be messing up pieces of the story, but there's this bartender, and he goes, "Can I get a whatever gin and tonic?" And she says, "You could have boring drink, or you could have the best vodka you've ever had in your life." And he says, "I'll have the best vodka ever." So this is like a rough, tough-looking woman, right? Okay. And so she reaches down. She's like, "It's okay if it has, or it's illegal. It's okay." And he's like, "Why is it illegal?" And he's like, "It has a little, I don't know, some insect in the thing in the bottom of it. The immigration doesn't like this."
Okay.
And he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm in. Yeah, let's do it." And so she pours herself some, pours him some. She's smoking, and she takes a shot, and he drinks it, and he sees this tattoo on her hand, and he says, "What does that mean?" He says, "Nie ma tigresa." And she says, 20,000 years ago, you wake up, you may get eaten by tiger. Nowadays, we have a bad meeting, and we lose our whole brains about it." And he's like, you know, "Oh, she's speaking to me," you know? And she's like, "It means there is no tiger."
There is no tiger.
And it's just such an important lesson, you know. I feel like that matters so much. I think perspective it breeds gratitude, you know. And when we realize that, like, we live in a time where, like, you know, the frustrating thing for us is camera B didn't record, you know,
Right.
and we lose our whole mind over
man.
it. Like the day is ruined. We don't get eaten by an animal, you know. And so all of those shirts, you know, like if you look at the shirt, you might see some Polish writing, you might see a tiger with an upside down tiger.
Yep.
Doesn't really necessarily mean anything to you, right?
Unless
but
you know the story.
When you hear the story. And so that's the thing that's why I fell in love with you. I was like so grateful for you because I'm like, you're breathing life into these lyrics, right? Like you're bringing these things to life, and they had a life, and that life is almost like reduced to bam, a product, and I hate it. I actually hate selling stuff. You talk to my business partners, they dislike me sometimes for it because I'm just like, I don't want to sell anybody anything except for the idea, you know, behind the thing. But obviously for us to continue to do what we do, all the things, right? But I'm like, I would love to just, you know, do what you do. I just love to tell people. I love to have these conversations, you know. I love to lead people in thought. Right, that idea of there is no tiger, or any of the look at any of our pieces, and we can have a conversation about it.
I'm the same. I love when a story can speak the language that you're hunting for, and you're like, I don't have a sentence or a phrase. Sometimes we put too much into like just a statement, and we don't know the story behind the statement. And so I think the power of story. In fact, that's part of the reason this podcast even exists is, can we tell people stories or let people tell their stories? Because I think if you tell your story, just that, it doesn't have to be all the nuts and bolts of it that I easily identify with every bit of it. It's just you telling your story then becomes a little part of mine, because that might spark something to where I'm now, that prompted me to do this. Or after I listened to that, I went and
that's it.
That's the whole purpose of it.
But it's getting back to where we all started, because that's the way everything was passed down anyway, was us telling our stories. And then we kind of stopped and started carrying everybody, not even everybody else's, but just started like living life in a way that didn't provide space for that. And what I love about, so I have been, I'm not going to call it stalking. I've been learning about you on Instagram. And one of the things I told David was, you're so full of life. Like everything that you do is not just, I know you're telling stories and you're learning, but it's exciting, and life should be that way. And I think I was like 90 years old when I was 7. Like I was just kind of, I wouldn't call it just an old soul. I was like a crusty old person when I was a kid. I just was always very serious and not having fun. And I feel like the Lord is like helping me reshape what it looks like to live. And that's been so fun because the safety second situation when he got that mug, I was like, dude, largely because we had a 17-year-old at the time.
It did. It affected her. She was like, I'm not sure what I think about this.
And I said, Hayden, I don't know about Hayden seeing that. So I have a sign. It might have been stolen. I got it from like a thrift store, but it says buckle up for safety. And it's what you read before you leave go into the garage and get into the car. And Hayden our 18-year-old just put a Post-it note on it that said safety second. And because it resonated with him in a way that I wasn't thinking it would. I was thinking it would actually do the opposite, where he would be like the kids when I was growing up riding on the roof of the car on a gravel road. And I was like, don't put that out for him.
You did that growing up?
I might have been driving the car once or twice. I never got on
So you provided the danger to someone else.
I also drove a hay truck. Well, you're from Sheridan. So there are like hay trucks where you fill it up with hay and people are on it holding them. And I used to drive those and it was terrible. But what I love
is slow driver.
There's so much.
Was it a manual?
Yes. And I was not a slow driver.
Ooh.
I was a terrible
That's the worst because you got to like throw the hay way faster. And you're like,
well,
can you slow down a little?
People like had to fall. They fell off of it once in a while when I was driving. But what I love is there's so much living that happens, and I think people crave, like Humans of New York. I don't know if you've ever.
Oh yeah.
So, but you're doing that like on the move, and I love it because there's depth and there's reach, and people are hungry for it. They're hungry to know what other people are going through and have gone through and learn from one another. But I think our daily life, we just get so in our own worlds, in our own echo chambers. And what I love is it's breaking out of that. And you've always loved that, even before it was super cool. You've loved listening to stories and then telling it. But it's been exciting.
Well, what I learned the hard way was, so Katie and I have our own story, and we didn't start off our relationship well. We made decisions that we knew we should have done it better. I'd talk about it. There's usually an order to a lot of things. If you take that order, it's not near as painful. We moved it all around.
We did the polka.
We did. We did things out of order, which made it just more complicated.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I end up getting into this place going, I can't do what I think I'm supposed to do in life unless I tell this story. I think I'm going to be hiding something. I'm going to feel like I'm keeping something from you. And so we began to tell our story at the risk of whatever it was. It could have just been the lies in our head. There may have not actually been a risk, but
sometimes it was you didn't get a job because you told the story.
That's true. Yeah,
they wouldn't hire you because you.
So one of our shirts says "risk happy," right? And so when you tell that story, it gives me goosebumps because I'm like that's what, man. I just love this. Like I love the podcast situation because it's podcast and campfires.
Yeah.
Campfires, we could have these same conversations, right?
Yep.
Without the microphones and the cool stuff.
But we have s'mores.
But you have s'mores. Yeah. Which we don't have here.
No, we don't.
No.
But we have coffee. And so that's very, very nice. But what you did by risking in telling the truth is you risk the possibility that what if I could be seen? What if I could be me?
Yeah.
What if my story could actually live and I could be happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and I could have the things that I want, because what the risk that you talk about is like I risk being seen. You know, I risk being vulnerable. I'm risking this. But the biggest risk to me is arriving, and again, like I had sort of that moment. I had a winter of just depression and thinking this is the end right now. But in that end, I thought back to what my story was. So I was like so grateful. And I feel like what's so cool, I don't want to get too far off, but what was so cool, people will throw arrows. They'll shoot me. They'll kill me. When I say this, but like in 2020, what was so cool about the pandemic was we all sort of went through this contemplation at the same time of like,
True.
What if this is it? What if we're all about to die of sickness? You know, there was a time of that where like, whoa, and
like an existential.
But everybody went through it together. So when you go through it by yourself, you know, you deal with this when a family member dies, or you know, your spouse dies, or a child dies, or whatever, and the rest of the world is just going, and you're like, what are you guys doing? How are you supposed to grocery shop when like I don't have someone next to me now? You know, like you get into that, and the pandemic was sort of like, we were all doing this together. So everybody sort of rethought how they're spending their time. And, you know, it's a great migration. People are moving. People are like, everybody's up. You know, I think it's so important for us to do the things that we believe in, you know, then and now, and give people a place to land while they're up. Because once people get settled, they stay. So what you could have done was you could have settled into, well, I can't let this truth be seen. This truth stays with me. And you would arrive at the end. I genuinely believe that you would arrive at the end going, I should have just let it go. Like I held that and it was too heavy, you know? So, dude.
I've been blown away, and I mean this, like not like, man, I'm blown away. No, I was really blown away when we began to share our story. How it would affect people, and it wasn't the details of our story. It was you'll tell that story. Can I tell you my story now?
Feels like permission.
Yeah, and that was the movement, and it wasn't like, let's get into the weeds of the details and all. No, it was if you say that, then either because of that I've got hope or an opportunity, potential. Maybe I'm going to be brave. Maybe I'm going to be courageous. And I didn't expect that. That was not like the agenda for me. It was, I have to get this out for me to be the person that I think I know I need to be. It's got to come out. So I remember actually in a sermon for the first time, like just saying it in the sermon, going, "There's people." I'm looking at people going, I don't know you.
This might be our last time.
I don't know you, and I do know you, and I don't know what you're going to do with it. You know, all this stuff.
It's crazy how you think like God's going to fly out of the sky, punch you in the face, and light you on fire if you tell the truth.
Right.
You know, and then you, or if you confront whatever the thing is in front of you that you know you need to confront, and then you do it, and you're like, and people are like, "Hey, me too.
Thanks."
It felt like an exhale.
Here's my thing. And you're like,
yeah.
You've got problems? We've all got problems. We all did something wrong. Holy cow! Right. So what is that story?
Oh, you can get a summary of it. Episode 1.
Okay.
That's what we even started. Episode 1 is a detailed account of the story, because that's.
I wish I would have listened to it.
Well, I'll get it to you, but that's what, off the fence. We're like, well, we got to start. We'll lead the way. Here's our story, but the short of it is like, so I'm a pastor at the time. Katie's going to college, Kansas State University, and we fall in love. Like long walks, you know, all the romantic, all that kind of stuff.
Cute. Very cute. I love it so far.
In the park,
all that kind of stuff.
not through like Target or something.
But
either is fine.
Yeah,
we
do both now.
We do a classic. So fall in love. We set up zero boundaries. There's things that we believed that we did not implement. We're just. It's all the emotions, the feelings, and the amazement of each other. And so I think it was a December month. She came over to my house. Took a pregnancy test. She's like, we're expecting a baby. We're not married. I'm a pastor, and in that world, that's a big no-no. It's weird that the church is not very good with some things, and they're great with others. For some reason, what we would call sexual sin, morals, whatever all that. And so in my world, that meant I'm out. I'm done. I'm gone. See ya. Not only that is you're never coming back. Kind of you're done. And so we knew we were in love. We were just had everything out of order, and so we got right with each other, going, hey, let's quit playing the game. Like, I love you, you love me. Let's get married. And resigned from the church I was at, and basically began to emotionally prepare for, let me go sell cars, or I don't know. I went to school to be a pastor.
You resigned.
I resigned my position
on your own accord, or
on my own accord.
Okay.
If I hadn't, I probably would have been forced to do it.
Yuck, man. Yeah, okay.
So I knew, I'm a pastor's kid. I knew what plays out. So I wrote the letter, resignation, went in, turned it in. But here's the credit. The board refused my resignation, saying, no, we'll work with you through this. And I said, I don't think it's right. I've been teaching the student. I was a youth pastor. I've been teaching the students all this. I should not be in leadership right now. And so I said, I need healing. I know there's some stuff broken that I need to, I think it's wise that I not have this job. We stayed in the church. The church wrapped their arms around us. We tell all the story in episode 1. And we saw a new concept of Jesus and the church going, you mean they don't always kick and kill and step on their wounded? And so to me, it birthed this idea, I wonder if I could lead a church someday, if I would ever be allowed to lead a church someday. That could be a church where it's done the right way. Not perfectly, but like our agenda is to do what I think God originally intended the church to be. Could we do that? And so, but I always lead with my story. So I'm in an interview process, interview 1 on the phone. Hey, any questions you have, David, for us? Well, not really a question, but I do need to tell you a story. Tell them a story. Oh, and that would pretty much end the conversation. Eventually, to no church in the nation. When I say in the nation, I had put applications, resumes, probably in about every state.
Were you married at this point?
Yeah, we were married at this point. We had actually gone through restoration with the relationships, like teenagers that I had just been preaching, you should be pure, you should do this. And they're like, are you a freaking hypocrite? And so we met with them and like, let's heal these relationships because I broke trust. And so we met and talked and processed and really got a great deal of healing. We just visited that church. They were closed that day, but we were driving around. There's special memories and great relationships there. But I was like, I'm supposed to be a pastor. So I started interviewing and spent 2 years. Nobody would give me beyond one interview. I mean, once I told them the story, it was over. 2 churches ended up saying, we're interested. One was in Kenner, Louisiana. If you don't know where that is, it's a suburb of New Orleans. Hurricane Katrina came by and killed the church, just wiped it out. So then there's one church that said, we'll do a second interview, and that was in Rapid City, South Dakota. And so I am a lead pastor of a church. It was the only church that would let me interview, like fully in-person interview. Mm-hmm. And that's what moved us up here. And our goal was this. We're going to try to lead a church that does it the way the Bible talks about. We hone in on Jesus. Our mission is to show people who Jesus is. And that's literally the heart. I have a role called pastor. I hate being called reverend. It's not, but for me, it's more about, I want people to know who Jesus is. My goal is not to get Brady into my church. My goal is not to get, I would love for you to know who Jesus is. I would love for anyone to know Jesus. I want my kids to know who Jesus is. I think that's just super important. And I let Jesus do all the other work. I believe that Jesus is stronger than I am and better than I am. And so we spend our lives, the rest of our lives, we're hoping to spend the rest of our lives just introducing people to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so we lead oftentimes with our story going, I was telling you about our church. Our church used to be pretty much a dead church. In 1999, it was supposed to close its doors. Couldn't pay bills, couldn't do anything. Church decided, let's keep trying. So they did. But our church has a death to life story. Katie and I have our own death. You mentioned death to life story.
It was a winter season for literally a winter season of losing relationships, and because we did lose some. But also a lot of it was stuff that we had walked through separately before we met that had created like a tumbleweed of stuff. I just see it. I'm from Kansas, so we have a lot of those. But even healing from that, but I think the Lord used that season to help us really break free from a lot of stuff that we didn't even know we were carrying still. It was so powerful.
We were supposed to meet, in my opinion, but we came together both pretty hurt and had some past wounds that we just hadn't really resolved. And so it was messy, us falling in love, getting together and working all of that out. And I tell people, out of the kindness of God, he let things happen, like a baby come, that made us finally wake up and say, how should we be doing life? What's a good way to do it? Rather than just doing whatever we feel, how should we be doing life? What's a good way? And so that's what we did. And so we went through a process. Our church, that's why I was like, it really helped us. I tell the story, literally one of the families said, why don't you come to church? And we're like, you obviously don't know how this works. We screwed up. You all hate us. We don't come back. You talk bad about us for the rest of our lives, and we say we deserve it. That's kind of like, we live in shame. And they're like, no, you need to come. I'm like, no, we'll meet you. And why don't you come sit with us? And it was that approach to life that we began to adopt. And so they literally met us at our car and walked us in, sat with us, made us feel safe. And we began to learn that people here aren't throwing stones. Mm-hmm. There's sure some people upset, but the mass majority were like, we're glad you're here. What can we do to help?
Yeah. You said that your kids, when you're youth pastor, they said, what are you, a hypocrite?
Yeah.
I just think that any pastor, any leadership position should begin with, I'm a hypocrite. Mm-hmm. That's the beginning. That's the start. Like that's leadership. Mm-hmm. That's honesty. That's truth. Like that's what it should be. It's not, hey, guess how you need to live. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like this.
Yep.
And I do, so you can too. That's just like, if anybody says that to me, this is what, when I was young, went to church, my EQ, my emotional intelligence was high. It's funny, my mom showed me this card that my 6th grade teacher brought yesterday, and it was this whole letter. I'd written her a letter because we did this role. I don't know what we did, but it was like, hey, I'm sorry that I framed you for these murders. And I signed off like Mr. Whole 9 Yards something, and the Whole 9 Yards was a movie about hitmen, right? Yeah. And so like the whole thing, I was like, wow, this kid was clever. Like I'm not this clever now, like, and there's this artwork and doodles and they all tied in. Anyway, I could pay attention way more than most adults believed a kid could, right?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And so I learned that now about kids now. Like you need to give them more credit, because if you don't, they'll just be like, yeah, you don't believe me, but just so you know, I do get it, know. But I'd pay attention in church, and I was like, everyone's a hypocrite. You're all like, this whole thing is just a charade, I remember I told you my mom slapped me.
Yeah.
One of the times that she did, which I don't know how many times she slapped me, but one time that I remember for sure, I had this AFI shirt. I don't know if you're familiar with AFI. It's a punk band. And
I don't know if I am.
It had a coffin and a little skull on top and some bats and whatever, and said AFI. Well, she didn't like me wearing shirts with skulls on them. And certainly not to church, right? But but pretty much period. Don't wear those you can wear them, whatever, but like don't wear them to school. Don't wear them to church.
Okay.
My mom and I really grew up together. I feel like, I think she grew as a parent so much in what to be close-fisted on, what to be open on, what to, and because I pushed her on so many things, and not just arbitrary rebelliousness where I'm just like, I'm just going to try to piss you off just to piss you off.
Right.
I would have a reason. I would have a whole, like, hey, let's have a discussion. Let's go back and forth on this. Well, one of the things, we're late for church. She's like, Brady, we're late. And so I run out, and I just put my black T-shirt on. I'm basically preparing. I'm like, this is my uniform for the battle I'm about to go.
You know what you're doing.
Yep. And so I get in there, and I'm fully prepared to go get into this with my mom. And I had every bullet point. I'm ready. And she starts backing up, as soon as she turns around to look here, she sees my shirt, and she goes, change your shirt. And I go, and she goes, bap, and just smacks me, man. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go change my shirt. But like, my problem was, I was like, do you think God doesn't know what shirt I got underneath this button up? We're acting, we're pretending like like this is just a very silly thing we're doing. This is a very silly dance we do for an hour and a half on Sundays. Because I know about your stuff, because I heard it from them, because they're talking about you behind your back, and you're doing something that is not very churchly, dude. Yeah. But you're being very, you're being very pious here. You're showing this whole thing off. This whole thing is a show, and I'm just not interested. I'm just not into it, and I think that my generation very heavily, and just the world now. They have seen the show. So when you talk about a church, they're like, no thanks, dude. Yep. Already tried it, been around that, been there, done that. No. And so one of my questions, I was on my way here, I'm like writing stuff down as I'm thinking. I got a bunch of stuff for you. But is what is church? What is the church? I think most people who don't attend, even maybe I would even be so audacious to say maybe most people who do attend don't quite. They would answer in a way that I don't think is in line with what the truth is supposed to be.
You'd get a mix of answers.
Yeah, and so when I think about what is the church, I think about campfires a lot of times. I think one of the guys, my buddy Sam. I hit him up on the way here, and I said, "What would you add? What do you think? I'm about to go to this podcast.
Yeah.
What strikes you? What do you think? How would this serve? What would you bring up?" And he just talked about, or really like, my intention is if someone's watching this who is sort of on the fence, right, that they would jump off. And I think that we both have a preference of which direction that they jump off. I think that the idea is the pursuit of truth. And my whole thing and everything that I'm trying to do is encourage people to pursue their best story, right?
Yeah.
And what the church would say is that your best story involves knowing who Jesus is, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever that best story looks like, it's this. Yeah. And so there's a chasm, there's a bridge to build, right, between someone saying, hey, I'm in pursuit of my best story, and like, have you considered Jesus, right? And they're like, no, dude, what are you doing? Why are you trying to? I'm trying to go toward my best story, and you're sending me towards backwards, right? That's the feeling. That's so many people's feelings. So I thought, how can I help bridge that gap? Because I've seen you. You've basically based a sermon off of an idea that we talk about all the time in our whatever it is, right? And I think that the church is not the walls, it's not the stuff. It's like it's the pursuit of understanding what love is, where it comes from, how it manifests, and doing that together as a community who believes the same things. And so anyway, I'm thinking about how I can bridge that gap. And my friend Sam says, he's like, I think the church fails to see the holiness of a bar. Mm-hmm. They there's a lot of programming. There's a lot of stuff on Sundays, and a lot of us don't mix with that. That's served that process, that structure has served a lot of people. A lot of people don't dig it, and a lot of times we turn it on for this period and then we turn it off in life, and it's just and when we see that, when non-believers see that, or when general populace sees that, we turn off, man. Like it's like he was super sweet at the hot dog run, or like he was real cool at the go clothe the homeless party where the cameras were on and we were doing the thing for an hour. But when he sees somebody in trouble at the gas station, right, I don't have time for that lazy person kind of thing, It's like, well, why'd you have time for these lazy people? There's just, you see the hypocrisy. But if it would start with, I am a hypocrite, I do the wrong things constantly, even though I know the right thing to do, I do the wrong thing, and I have an answer for that if you're like that too. Like if you would lead with that, which is the thing that you were so terrified to tell.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that thought you'd be excommunicated.
Oh, for sure.
And to me, it is your greatest strength as a pastor. It's an actual open door, even to the guy with the knife and the coffee and the phone in his hand.
Well, and just for the church that I had grown up a part of sounds exactly like the church that you grew up being a part of. And I think what's missing there is freedom to be who you are and to communicate your story too. I just wanted to say that because I felt that so strongly when you were saying that's I grew up that way, wondering why I wasn't.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me that I'm not doing everything right like everybody else is? But the truth was that nobody was.
When I started paying attention, it was like, hang on a second, because you begin with whatever your parents told you is the truth.
Right.
That's what you start
Sure.
with. And then you start being sentient, you start, wait a minute, you start putting things together and your eyes are opening up. And what that often feels like is my eyes opened up and I saw that the truth that I was told. But the trouble is like the scariest thing is not to miss by a mile, it's to miss by an inch. So when you see when Jesus's name is attached to this church that is full of things that are not who Jesus was, they're glued together, Those are the things. So when I see Jim cheating on his wife,
right.
All of a sudden I'm like, Jesus is fake. This is not real.
Yeah.
What this guy says, because I've been taught that, right? Which is what you were taught, which is what you felt.
I was afraid. And again, some of it's internal. That it's not that someone had come up to me and said, "You better not ever share that story," right?
Oh yeah, but shame told you that.
Yeah.
And the shame is real. It comes from real experiences. You pay attention, and that shame exists. And I love the story that people said, "No, dude, we'll stay here," but that should not be an exception. It shouldn't be. Right. It's a beautiful story, and I love it. But I wish it wasn't so uncommon. I wish it wasn't so like, wow.
So that's our resolve, man, because so I don't want it to be uncommon. So my solution isn't to throw the church away. It's to be that church, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what fueled us going. I know churches are turning us down, and I know this might be a big deal to some people, but I think the majority of people, let's be the solution rather than join the crowd pointing at that's the problem. And so we led with our story. In fact, not too long ago, last March, I told the church, I basically told the church I have an addiction. I said I use food. I use it for celebration. I use it to lament. I use it whatever way you can use stuff. I use it. And so I said it's got to change. And so I went on a year-long of learning portion control, learning all that stuff, and saying I'm using it, and shared it with the church. Shared it at the beginning. Shared it at some major victory moments, like, hey, I've dropped 75 pounds. This is going well. Let me tell you what I've learned along the journey so far. And even actually, I'm talking about it coming up soon, like talking about self-control and how there's these moments where you don't have the self-control, and you're like, I know better than that. So what I'm trying to do is be the pastor that, what I would tell your buddy that you talk to is, our church is full of hypocrites. Our church is full of people who believe one thing and have examples of doing the other. And my definition of church would be a group of people who are aware that God exists and acknowledge a need for God. A church is not the structure, the ritual, the idealism of whatever things should look like. I can nerd you out on the history that way before the word church basically meant a gathering of people who commonly believe about one thing. Like they're united over something. It's a gathering. Eventually, over time, a new word was adapted mostly in Germany to show you the spot where they began to provide another word for church that was more specifically about the building. And then from that era on, it began to be more about the church building and where the actual facility that people were gathering. Then we've got rituals going on, and you've got people going, if that's what this is, that doesn't look a lot like Jesus on the hillside, preaching a sermon about the Beatitudes, preaching, like talking about how we treat people and talking about how he's the way. Doesn't look like that.
But he gets, that's what I witnessed was, or what I witnessed myself do, was attach Jesus to these people who were fake. They were faking it. And so I tossed the literal and proverbial baby out with the baby out with the bathwater. I was like, no, don't want anything, any part of it. But everybody that I talk to in the world has some anxiety. They have something. They have like, this can't be it. This can't be all. I'm in pursuit, and they're in pursuit. And like I said, I've got friends all over the place, but they're all in pursuit, right? They're either depressed, anxious, very successful and missing something. Everybody feels like there's got to be something more. And I think that and they're all excited to learn everything except for my observation is, if you say Jesus, they're like, no, I already checked that out. I've already been through that. No thanks. And I just think that's a huge disservice. And yeah, I just love it, man. I think it's very cool what you're doing. I just trust you. I believe you, and I think that I believe you. And I didn't know why. As soon as I saw you, well, when you had a cool mug, that helped, right? But as soon as I started paying attention, usually I pay attention just long enough to where I can be like, no,
okay,
you know what I mean? And I think most people do. And so anytime that you're like, when you start to fake it, people smell that. You know
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And so because you chose from the get-go, from your guys' genesis as parents, you chose truth and to risk the truth living. Now you are living truth. Like you now, I can trust you because I can see that I believe you, right?
And thanks, man. I want to say this though. I'm trying to behave out what I would love for people to behave back. And what I mean is, I would love people to give church another chance. Now, I don't lead every church.
Yeah.
I don't, and I could come up with a list of churches I don't want you to go to. I mean, but the reason I try to do this back, when I go to a restaurant and if I get service that is atrocious, I'm coming back. If the server like botches the whole thing up, I'm coming back. If I get if the cook just screws it up, I'm coming back. Because I want to be the guy that's like, I know what is possible here and potential here. If it's 15 times in a row and it's all atrocious, I'm probably not coming back. But what I would if people would be willing to give a healthy church another swing, I think there's great potential, because I can tell you in my world I know pastors, there's been a shift, but the problem is there was decades of, Katie's got her own stories. There's been decades of just misrepresentation of
damage.
Yeah.
But what I think too, though, my heart, I'm so passionate because I grew up in one of those churches where vacation Bible schools were the book of Revelation. Like you just come and get this crap scared out of you, and then just live right because you're so scared. Yeah. And my heart, I want everybody to know the Lord, and within the capacity of my passions, I just go walk around downtown and talk to people who really don't get seen by a lot of people. And so talking to them about stuff, but my passion is also people that have been sitting in a pew for 70 years to the point that they're like, there probably is an indent on the pew because of how long they've been there, but they've never actually...
They're pew-shaped.
There it is. But they've never experienced freedom in Jesus. Like, they've never actually been able to do that. Like, I have such a passion for that, too, because my sweet little home church that did not necessarily behave the way that the one we were at. Yeah. They did not live out what we were hoping they would live out when we started telling our story. I want freedom for them, too. And I want them to really not have to live... Literally, like, it feels like putting on a special shirt, because I remember we had a station wagon where the back seat, you looked out the back.
I had that too. I had a Chevy Celebrity.
It's crazy. I threw up every time I rode in it. But
I
we would be
made sure
driving
that
to
the people
church,
who rode in
and
the back threw up.
yeah, my parents were nice people, but boy, we got it on the way to church. Like, be quiet, or did you wear this, or whatever. Like, but I want freedom for people to go. Life actually isn't great, and I think I told David part of my healing from what we experienced when we started sharing our story. Part of the healing that I've walked through is forgiving them for not even knowing, because I think in their minds, acknowledging what we went through and accepting us in the process would put a light on maybe what they were walking through that they were afraid to show anybody else. And that's not freedom. And I want people to be able to say, I'm really struggling with this and I need help. I need somebody to walk with me. And I think a lot of times, I can't speak for every person or every church that walks that stuff out, but I know for us there, it was a small town. And if anybody knew, you'd be done. And that's not the way of Jesus.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy that you can, like, imperfection is our common bond. It is our common, like, all of us, you know?
If someone were to read, sometimes we look at church and we make our analysis there, but if you were to read the Bible, the guy, Paul, who wrote a ton of the Bible, over and over says, I'm screwed up. I've been screwed up. I've done horrible things. It's all in there. Peter, we get his example of royally screwing up multiple times. The Bible's full of, here's all the screw ups. That's the book of Judges is one of my favorite, because it's not about judging. It's about screw up. And it's like, I identify with that. So the Bible's full of it. Some point over time.
The Bible's full of it. Quote.
Full of it. There you go. Yeah.
I literally was like,
full. No, I'm saying the Bible's full of those stories where I'm thinking, what could church exist where it's like we look at it for what it really is instead of try to put pretty flowers on top of it and say, no, that's not what it really is. No, that
feels like an overcorrection, though. I think it was I used to be a history teacher.
Cool.
I really love history. And I married a guy that is learning to appreciate history. Yep. But historically, throughout the years, we overcorrect. Mm-hmm. And messy is just hard. I love digging down. I'll sit on a sidewalk with somebody and talk. I don't care, we'll get dirty. But
with your cool
most
suit.
People, I think we end up we overcorrected and went, nope, we got to look a certain way. We've got to present ourselves a certain way. And I can literally feel the power of the Lord pulling us back to going, when you're sharing your story and when you sit down with somebody and go, because that's what you said that when you were traveling. Like, one of my favorite questions is to say, what happened to you? Not why are you doing this? What happened? What happened to you? Because something did, and I can see it in your eyes, or the way you're screaming at me, or whatever, like whatever's happening. And I feel that pull back to not looking or behaving a certain way, but looking at each other and going, what happened? Or how can I walk with you? Or what can I learn from you? And I love that I get to be a part of a community that's doing that. But a lot of it is saying, yeah, we're all kind of a mess. There's a quote from my favorite TV show that is, my mom says it all the time too, that all God's children are weirdos. And it's true.
What TV show is that?
30 Rock.
Oh, yeah. I figured. I heard that earlier. Yeah, I think, being out there, when you can begin on common ground, you can walk with each other, because there you are on the same ground. And right now, what we do so consistently is we start with why we're different constantly, So I just, and then we don't walk together. Because we're not on the same ground, and so when we try to walk together, it's an atrocity, it's a tragedy, it's terrible, because we go, I'm different than you because of this, I'm different than you because of this, and I think that when you say I am not worthy of you guys because I'm like this. And you're the reaction that you thought someone was going to punch you in the face, and what actually happens is they go, "Oh, hey, I'm like this."
Yeah.
You go, "You're like that?" You're like, "Yeah, I wish I wasn't, but I am." That to me is the all too powerful message that we forget, we gloss over, we jump over, and I don't think you do. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm paying attention, because I'm stoked, and not that you're the only one, and you're not the only one. There are a lot of great people who are trying to get it right in the name of truth. They're saying, here's all the things, here's the truth. I'm trying to get it right, and I'm not. But I'm not with you in truth, in genuine pursuit of it. When we start to fake it, we are not in genuine pursuit of it, and people smell it, and then people bail. And when you're going to represent, it's weird to me in the West. There are a lot of names you can say where people are like, nice, and like, great, oh, very cool, oh, very good. And Jesus is just one that's like, no, you can't. Don't quote that guy. You know what I mean? Gandhi, down. But Jesus, nah, dude. Right. Don't bring your Jesus stuff in here. I don't care what he said. You could find someone else who said something sort of similar. And it's weird, and it's a bummer. Have you ever heard of the Jefferson Bible?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's always an interesting thing to bring up. What do you think of the Jefferson Bible?
I think it's a classic example of what culture does.
Tell me why.
We remove what we struggle to believe.
Yeah.
What is hard to get our minds wrapped around. We default to, it must not be true or relevant to me. And I think the Jefferson Bible, it's going on then too, but I think, and the history is that he struggled to believe the supernatural stuff. It was like, that's outside of the natural. So it must, I need it out of this.
Right. I'm not there. I'm trying to, yeah. So it classically, when I have this discussion, it's either great or it's blasphemy. It's either like, and I think that it doesn't, whatever it was to Thomas Jefferson, doesn't have to be what it is to someone else. But if when they pay attention and they read and they, they took a handful of different languages that it was in, and took Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? Put it together and took all of the things that Jesus said, removed all the miracles, right? And when you read through that, you get an account of Jesus that's just Jesus.
Right.
It removes a lot of the stuff people struggle, they find, they hang up, and then they never get to. And so it's almost like an on-ramp to Christianity that actually starts. And it starts with like, hey, learn about this guy for a second. Let me just describe a guy to you, right? He does this, and he doesn't do this, he does this. And he's not hanging out over here like you thought he was. He's actually hanging over here with these guys, right? Yeah. And he didn't say this like you thought that's what he would say. He said this. That is the antithesis of that. And he didn't act like these guys. He actually wrecked their whole operation and threw stuff around and went nuts about it. That's the guy I'm talking about. He protested, and he didn't just stand outside. He threw stuff. Yeah. He said to love people and did it. He went to talk to the people that nobody else would talk to. He went out to the people who were not clean enough and said, "You guys are the ones." And if people like, what do you think of that guy? Don't put a name on him. You know what I mean? Like I'm talking about, take the Jefferson Bible and take names out of it and just tell some stories. And people would go, and what would happen is you would break down enough to find common ground. Like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty righteous dude. Yeah. And you go, okay, cool. So we can agree that the guy who would do this and did this and is this and was this, that'd be cool, right? Like you could be down with that guy, And people would go, yeah, dude, of course. What are you talking about? What's the problem? Like, okay, what if I called him Jesus? You're like, oh gosh, what are you talking about? And it's like, all right, just think about it. See you later. Yep. And then it's like, you got in, MXPX. You ever heard of MXPX?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I got an MXPX tattoo on my arm. And that's really that's the trick for me. I was into punk rock. I was into rebelliousness. I was trying to do anything that they told me not to when I was a teenager. And And so I had, all this music that I wasn't allowed to listen to. Another time that my mom slapped me. But one of the bands was MXPX. And I went and saw him, and then I'm singing along when I went and saw him, and I'm singing along, and I noticed I know these lyrics, and he just said God's grace, and I'm like, how do I know all the lyrics, but I didn't know what he was singing about, and I just realized that I'm pretty sure this guy is, holy cow, these guys snuck in. How did these guys? Went and found the Let It Happen CD, and I'm like, it's a skateboarder on the front of it, some skyline. How did these guys get in here? Crystalina, Christians don't sing about cool stuff. They don't play punk rock. What the heck? And it was just this effect where I was like, well, they're already in. I guess I might as well hear what they have to say. So you read the lyric sheet, and you go, huh, that broke the mold. Yeah. That's different. I can't quite toss that out because they looked the way they did. My band, we chose not to swear in our music. We chose not to drink or smoke on stage, not because we thought those things were awful, but because when I was coming up, I remember going to this metal show, and it was like, hey, if you're not getting messed up, bounce. This is before Lil Jon, too. They really should have figured that out. He kind of robbed the line from him, but I was like, oh, so we must... I got to get drunk or I'm not really welcome here, And I hated that because I'm like, well, what if people don't want to get drunk? They just like the music, So we play with a lot of bands that would drink, smoke, and do whatever. And we just were an alternative. We just had we just didn't do those things. And we didn't say hey, we don't cuss, because we're better than people. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was just no, we're just not going to do it. And then people would start to ask. And it's Go Fast is very similar. They're like, how come you say heck on wheels? There's this very similar stuff. What are you guys doing being a motorcycle brand that's talking about peace in the process, enjoying what are you guys doing? And I'm like, this is exactly what I want you to do. I want you to ask the questions so we can have the conversation, and I just loved it. And so, that's what brought me here, this provocative safety as an idol. Well, everyone's going to throw excuse me, and guys like me are going to go, he's talking about safety as an idol?
Yeah.
Okay,
Parents think that's their role in life is to keep their kids safe.
Right.
And to teach them to be safe.
As if they could,
Right. And then don't let them play any sports.
Right.
Don't ever put them in a car.
Right. Put them in a bubble. Yeah. Feed them.
If you're going to be principled, be principled. And no, that's why
But second is a high priority.
Right. It's like, and that's, I think I even said that in the sermon. I'm not saying it has no value whatsoever. I would if I'm flying on an airplane, I would love for that pilot to know how to land that airplane safely.
Cool.
I think be fantastic. So it's not that it matters, nothing, zero, but I just don't think it should be the ultimate goal.
But we're going to fly.
Right.
So
right.
It's clearly not first. Or we wouldn't jump on this giant bus 5,000 feet in the air going 700 miles an hour if our intention in life was to be safe. We just wouldn't do that. The intention is life isn't going to be safe. The actual, so there's an article on our website that says what don't die means to us. So this brand actually has, which is sort of on the surface a funny brand with a lot of clever quips. Don't die. There's a poem from written by Marianne Williamson, and it's called Die Slowly, and it's actually here. I'll pull it up real quick.
Okay. By the way, before you go today, I have a couple gifts for you because we apparently seem to have the same. I don't know, something's influencing us the same. So I couldn't find some hats I liked. So I went to someone in our church. I'm like, can I make my own hat? And here's what I wanted to do. That kind of birthed into, what if I took the stories that I tell in sermons and I had a hat to where there's just a symbol, not this overt, have you come to know the Lord Jesus Christ, your personal Savior today, or are you going to burn in hell? Kind of, but what a story. And
that resonated.
Yeah, what if there was a hat that said that? Yeah. That caused the question to be asked. So I'll give you some because I'm like somehow our brains have been connected in some way.
Yeah, I love that.
I know I got stories about llamas and ships and coffins. And by the way, if you don't know this, we were taught this by a therapist who sat here in the same seat where you are, that in the old days, Christians actually put a skull on their desks to remind them that one day they would die. And so life does matter. So actually, not to go against what your mother has said,
A memento.
skulls for a long time were used by Christians, church-going people, as like a main thing.
My mom, in that time, like I said, we both grew up together.
Yeah.
She was looking at the church and going, they will judge me if my,
Yes.
I'm not going to be
Yes.
well accepted if my
Yes,
kid
I
shows
feel
up.
that.
And so she
Yeah.
had this, and a lot of people were telling her, because I was trouble, man.
Okay.
And so a lot of people were telling her, hey, you need to do this. You need to do this. It needs to be like this. Here's how you parent. You need to whip that boy into shape. You can't. And I think she got she's like, everybody's telling me how to do this.
I get it.
How about I just do it my way?
Yeah.
And we both kind of got there at the same time where I'm like, I'm pushing against this. I'm not down. All of the discussion with anybody, I'd love to get into it because I'm actually in pursuit of truth. And this isn't it. You know what I mean? And when kids come up and they attach that to the church, then they're out.
Yep.
They're out, and good luck getting them back in because they already checked it out for years.
Yep.
And that's the thing too, though, is it's in because the same thing that people feel when they walk into church, they might feel when, like me, they go to a mom's group, and our oldest was, he's incredible, but he was a struggle, and there was so much shame and judgment put on us because of the way that he was. So I got kicked out of 2 moms groups because
Nice.
of his sweet face.
She's a rebel.
But
You need to get kicked out of those groups. That's
you,
like this.
But
yeah,
you go to
important.
these different. There are all of these different like echo chambers through our lives that we have to be a certain way to get in. And we just learned in parenting, we're going to love him and help him, but we cannot be identified by his behavior. Like I have to take anyway.
He
There's
gets
a lot
to
of
be him.
there's
We
a
get
lot
to
of
be us.
a lot
Yeah.
of complexities involved in parenting. Because I, too, for a number of reasons, I don't like skulls, but that's because of something that I walked through in my past, not with a skull. But I have one, but I would tell Hayden not to wear one either. So your mom and I would love
Wear a
to
skull?
meet with her, like on a shirt or something.
Oh, gotcha.
I want a
thought-
skull tattoo.
I thought you meant like you had a
Oh, no, I have one right.
helmet.
Like I have one.
It's a skull.
And, I have one on my body, but I don't want, I was like, you already have one. You don't need to wear another one.
underneath all your stuff.
Yeah,
It looks
there's one in
nice. I
there.
like
Thank
how
you.
just
Thank
decorated it
you.
very
Yeah,
well.
I've decorated it really nicely. Sorry.
Poem.
So this is what don't die. The go fast.
Okay.
So the go fast part is about finding your edge. It's about living in a place where you feel like you're living fast.
Okay.
We have a shirt that says "Fast is a feeling." It's speed is a number. Fast is a feeling. Fast and go fast has nothing to do with the speed. It has to do with the feeling of how you're living, and you should be living our fast life. Our best life is what that means. The don't die part. I'll just read this. It says, he or she who does not turn things topsy-turvy, who is unhappy at work, who does not risk certainty for uncertainty, to thus follow a dream. Those who do not forego sound advice at least once in their lives die slowly. He who does not travel, who does not read, who does not listen to music, who does not find grace in himself, she who does not find grace in herself dies slowly. He who slowly destroys his own self-esteem, who does not allow himself to be helped, who spends days on end complaining about his own bad luck, about the rain that never stops, dies slowly. He or she who abandons a project before starting it, who fails to ask questions on subjects they don't know, he or she who don't reply when they are asked to do something that they know, or who are asked something they do know, die slowly. Let's try and avoid death in small doses, reminding oneself that being alive requires an effort far greater than the simple act of breathing. Only a burning patience will lead to the attainment of a splendid happiness. That's it.
Love it.
That's the don't die part. And I think these slow deaths are, we're in pursuit of getting rid of those things. A slow death would have been you taking your secret and making it a secret and trying to cover it up and not allowing it to live in your story. It'd be a slow death, and you'd be living it and be sad. So I'm very proud of you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for making the time to come over.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much,
what
yeah.
you do. I think it's a big deal. Thanks for influence in my life, which actually is now leaked into, now influences one of my son's lives. It's cool. Thanks. I appreciate it.
I'm honored, man. I'm grateful. Super grateful to come on this podcast, hang out with you guys. Great to meet you guys. All the nice things that I could say
Cool.
right now. the people listening, thanks for, if you paid attention this long, man, what a compliment it is to me and us. And so thank you very much.
Something. Well, thanks for listening and watching. If you got questions, thoughts, concerns, need help, you can text us 605-250-1224. But until next time, know we love you and hope this has been meaningful.